So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts 31. I almost called it 30 when I was making this thumbnail because I can't count. That's the reason. This is rambly, incoherent nonsense. I know David Reeves was on the thumbnail, but he's next up. First, we're going to get some Randy Galuzza, and of course, we have, with us, Vishanti, who is in fact wearing feeders, as promised, but not delivered for a while. I was actually going to say, like, if you didn't wear feathers today, I wasn't going to say it at first, but I was going to come up back afterwards and be like, hey, you got to stop promising feeders if you can't deliver feeders.
Hey, I wouldn't promises I can't deliver on a regular basis.
Okay. Laughing Coyote for $9.99 said, this coyote has the sniffles. Have fun today. I'll catch up later. Well, Coyote, I hope that your sniffles clear up. Sniffles are no fun. Make sure that the facial tissues you get are nice and soft, and maybe the ones with a lotion. Because the worst thing is when you get that like raw red around your nostrils because you're just wiping too much. Like, it's the worst. Terrible. Yeah, I started using the ones with the lotion, and now I don't ever blow or wipe my nose with the facial tissue unless it's got some lotion in there. Like, ooh. Anyway, you guys might be able to see we do have the drinking counter up because Randy Galuzza and David Reeves, yeah, I'm gonna need it. I also want to send a special thank you before we get going to all the people who helped me render over the last few days. I had 76,339 different PNGs to get rendered. All 1080 or 1920 by 1080 PNGs that needed to be rendered for the next video I'm making. And people really stepped up. I think we maxed out at 9 people rendering at once, including myself, which is a pretty good number. And the last few frames finished earlier today, and I'm waiting for Sheepit to compile that into something I can download. And then, hopefully, if you have early access to videos, you'll be able to see that video either later on today or early tomorrow.
Neat.
So, yeah. With that, though, Vishanti, do you have any quick announcements before we get into the rules?
No, I don't think so. Oh, wait. Oh. Strawberry Vein, if you're watching this, your tinted lip balm, I am wearing it right now, and I quite like it.
I see Strawberry Vein in chat right now.
Hey!
So, yep. The Screen Geek for €2 says, don't forget to hit that like button. Agreed. Please do hit the like button. All right, guys, so we are doing this with a bit of drinking. I am drinking some caffeinated fruit-flavored nonsense with some rum in it. I still have rum from, like, over a week ago, which is nice because I don't have to spend any extra on rum. And, of course, it was, like, the cheapest rum because, well, it's work rum. You know?
Yeah.
I gotta maintain a budget if it's work rum. If it's, like, have fun celebration rum, then I can go a little bit more expensive. But anyway, so, guys, the way this works is we will take a drink for a few different things, one of which Savage Cobra Kinda Official just demonstrated for us. So, Savage Cobra Kinda Official for $2 said, AIG is a giant bag of Sicilians, which is the kind of amphibian, not people from Sicily.
The amphibian, not the people from Sicily.
Yeah. So we'll take a quick drink for that. Thank you very much. Which, of course, brings up our first and probably our most popular viewer-caused drink trigger, which is that if you super chat or milestone chat anything to the effect that AIG is a bag of dicks, we will take a drink. And if you don't know why a particular kind of amphibian might look like a dick, maybe Google what they look like. And then you'll... The appropriate gif is, you know that guy who looks up astonishedly and says, that's a penis. That's the appropriate gif for Sicilians. Yeah.
My brain keeps wanting to read that as Caecilius. I'm like, I've read too much Doctor Strange.
I mean, look, you can say it that way. That would be a perfectly reasonable Latin pronunciation. So, I'm not going to stop you.
That's fair. So, I think they were saying that Caecilius in the movie and the comics was a big dick.
Ah.
It kind of was. Kind of was.
Well, so yeah, that is one of the drink triggers that you guys there in the audience can trigger. You can also trigger a drink if you super chat or milestone chat with any of the kaiju emojis. Now we have Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. Now that's any message at all. If it has one of those, we'll take a drink. Now, we don't take double drinks if you have like AIG and then also a Godzilla. We generally can only trigger one drink per super chat. However, if you do want to trigger multiple drinks right in a row, that is what the gifted memberships are for. Generally, we will take one drink per gifted membership. However, as we found out last time, you can go up to 50 memberships, in which case it's more of a finish the drink, get a new drink, and then continue on, rather than count out 50 drinks. Because
that Tuesday show was legendary.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing to get 50 gifted
It was legendary.
in one go.
Yeah.
Also, I have decided that YouTube is basically just gaslighting me when it comes to how many members do you need for the next emoji, because it's just incoherently crazy. Like, it said, oh, you need 11, then it said, oh, you need like 60, now it says, oh, you need like 11 again, and I'm like, but I just got 66, what are you talking about? Yeah, so I have no idea, but we have a few gifted memberships and a super chat coming in. So Zbel1994 for €10 says, I have a Eurovision watch party, so I cannot stay, but have a wonderful day or evening. I'm looking forward to catching up on the video. Mothra emoji, and we will take a drink for the attempt at the Mothra emoji. A lot of different places that you can watch YouTube, like different apps and whatnot, are iffy on the channel emoji. We also have 6 different gifted memberships, 1 from Mark Smith and 5 from Too Young to Feel Us Old. Let's read off those names and then we'll take drinks for them. So we got Robert Carter, Andrometheus, Margaret Zelensky, Kevin Webster, Keisler, and Blue Flames. So let's take 6 drinks for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm going to stir a little better, because those drinks were heavily rum. And less heavily...
What does it say about these streams that they are now becoming drinking streams?
Oh, it says that Genesis Apologetics is the absolute worst.
They're the worst.
They really... And, like, you pair it with ICR, and it's just, like, scraping the bottom of the barrel to see what scum is down there, because, like, you left a pile of fish in there for 40 years, and just gross.
So, I am now reminded, seeing all the tunicates in chat, that when Strawberry Bean sent me these like nail polish and some tinted lip balm, I also got a card, and on it, it says Tunicate Uprising.
Which is absolutely disgusting.
Yes, my children. So...
All right, we got a couple more super chats real quick. Pibblepunk says, AIG is a heaving net of Priapulida. Nice. Priapulid worms aren't called penis worms for nothing.
There's a person in chat, Pelagic Tunicate Truth Official.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
DM Wing for $2 says, just a reminder that turtle are the best tetrapods with attempted a Godzilla emoji. So we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much, DM Wing. All right, guys, so we're also going to talk about the drink triggers that the creationists can cause, because most of our drink triggers are supposed to come from them, although it is always nice to get 10 before we even start. We will take a drink whenever the creationist says something that's so stupid that I kind of have to cool my brain down. Sometimes my brain threatens to melt, and the alcohol helps cool it off. Because I don't know if you know, alcohol has a lower threshold for evaporation than water does, so, you know, it cools you with all that latent heat of vaporization. It totally happens inside your brain. Don't question it. Oh, Pelagic Tunicate Truth Official, who's been a member for 1 month, is at the tetrapod level, says, Pelagic Tunicate Assemble, show our love to Dapper. Thank you very much. Alright, so we'll also take a drink whenever the creationists get something that is actually factually correct, but it can't just be a quotation. They actually have to come up with a true thought in their own brain, and then say the true thought out of their own mouth. And then we will take a drink for that. Our least frequent drink trigger, but if we haven't had one by, like, the 3rd quarter or so of this, like, towards the end, maybe the, end of the 3rd quarter, beginning of the 4th quarter of the show, we start to get generous. If they're like, and my name is, and we're like, oh, that's true, we'll take a drink. it eventually gets to be like, hey, did you know you get points on the SAT for putting your name in there? Yep, you sure do. Mark
Job.
Smith, who's been a member for 4 months, is at the tetrapod level, says AIG is a Heward's handy haversack of
Handy
eggplants.
haversack of.
Yes, nice.
Good.
We'll also take a drink if the creationist tells a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that we're pretty sure didn't happen. For instance, if a creationist were to mix up the conversation that he had with his shampoo bottle with a conversation he had with a hypothetical Berkeley professor on an airplane, then we would take a drink for that. That's just a random example. That doesn't really come up much at all. I don't know why I give that example. We also take a drink if one of us can successfully predict the argument where it's not very clear where it's going. So it's like, oh, hey, what is the point he's trying to make? What's the argument going to be? If one of us can pick it and say it beforehand, take a drink for a correct prediction. We will also take a drink. Oh, Seismic Nuggets has just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Send tetrapods.
You get
Tetrapods. Tunicates are chordates, but they're not tetrapods. Right phylum, wrong, I don't even know. Super class, subphylum, I don't even know. Yeah. But thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate it, Seismic Nuggets. I lost my place, though. Oh, also, Trojan source is the other big one. And Trojan source is what happens when a creationist cites a source to support some claim, and then we check the source, and the source directly contradicts that claim. The person we're going to be starting off with, Randy Galuzza, is the person who inspired this, because every single one of the sources he has shown so far not only fail to support his claim, but they almost all directly contradict his claim. Like, they say directly, no, Randy's idea here is dead wrong. So we take a drink for those Trojan sources. And also, last but not least, sometimes, audibly, Godzilla or Mothra might stop by, and if that happens, take a drink for it. So, without further ado, now that we've been doing this for like 12 minutes already, and we have 11 drinks, let's actually hear from Randy Galuzza. Yeah,
Oh
I know.
boy.
I know. All right, here we go.
For instance, when Darwin saw organs that he didn't know immediately the function of, evolutionists characterized them as what? Vestigial.
Nope, that's
Survey
also...
says
yeah.
That's a lie.
That's not how that works. So, we're backing up like a few seconds to go over a few of the things he said at first, and then we'll go through. So, what vestigial organs are organs that no longer perform the primary function of that organ in other organisms that have it. So, for instance, a ostrich wing isn't useless. It's useful for balance and for display, but it's really, really, really bad at helping the ostrich fly, in that it basically can't help the ostrich fly whatsoever. So it is a vestigial wing, is a perfectly functional rudder, and it's a great display mechanism, but it's vestigial as a wing. The whale's pelvis is really, really bad at supporting the whale's weight on land. It's good at other things. It's like good at attaching muscle points. It's good as a marker between, like the lumbar and the caudal vertebrae. It's great for that. Oh, drink for Godzilla. But it's really bad for helping support weight or terrestrial locomotion. So it's a vestigial pelvis. It's not that it doesn't have function, it's that it doesn't have the primary function. That's important.
Doesn't have its OG function.
Right. Now you might say, okay, well, how do we know which function is the primary function? And it's like, yes, I understand it's a bit of a judgment call. Nature doesn't care what things we call vestigial or not. But to say that vestigial structures are useless structures and we declare them useless because we don't know what the function is, completely wrong. Vestigial structures frequently have functions. They are not, thereby not vestigial. Cyrus Cobra Kind official says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." Yeah, I feel like that is in the Bible somewhere.
Yeah. Mark Smith says, ostriches can fly, though, if you throw them hard enough.
Well, okay. That's just falling with style.
Yeah.
Also, you know what? Thou shalt not bear false witness. That's in the Old Testament, though, so I don't know if it counts. Oh.
Don't give on that. You explicitly told me we weren't going to go on tangents. Try to get through Randy Galuzza.
No, I said if we don't do too many.
Did they know that they were vestigial?
Yes.
No, they didn't. Does the word, quiz time, does the word vestigial carry ideas about its origins? You better believe it does.
I agree there. Yeah, I guess it does. Because to be a vestige of something, there has to have been an earlier thing that was not a vestige. Right?
What the word means.
It is the characterization which was working on people's minds, which carries the work of the propaganda. When they saw DNA that they didn't know what the function was, they characterized it as what? Junk.
Also wrong. And for basically the same reason, right? So, there is a lot of DNA that it's not that it's unknown what the function is. It is known to not have function. There's a big difference there, right? Being known to not have function and having unknown function, not the same thing. For instance, Shanti, have you ever heard of this thing called scurvy? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that almost all primates can get scurvy?
We don't have the ability to generate or process our own vitamin C.
Yeah, but now
Anymore.
Your dog or cat can't get scurvy because they can produce their own vitamin C. So what's the difference? Well, it turns out that both humans and dogs have a gene for making vitamin C. However, the human version is broken. What's the function of that gene? It doesn't have one. Now, there are also mathematical ways that you can demonstrate that it is just a physical requirement of the fact that human beings have the population that they do and are not currently declining in population. That a certain percentage of their genome at minimum must be non-functional, right? So I'm not going to get too heavily into it because I'm actually planning a show with Zach B. Hancock, who's an evolutionary biologist who's currently in the field gathering data for a pop gen analysis about crustaceans.
It's going to be so cool.
Yep. So I'm actually planning this with him. So we're going to get more in depth there. But in order for the mutation rate to be what is observed in a given population, and for that population to have a certain size, and to be increasing in size in population, right? It actually mathematically requires a certain percentage of the genome to be junk. And it turns out that for humans, it's a pretty sizable function. It's well over 50% of the human genome is mathematically certain to be non-functional. Because if it were all functional, the human population would have to, of necessity, be declining. There isn't a way around that. That's just like 1 + 1 = 2 level math, right? Like, you can't really get around it. So, yeah.
Schmilly pollen, and then in that case you can just make up your own math.
Yep. Well, yeah, you can just do it. Reverend Howell says, vestigial organs equal Wurlitzers. No longer in a picture house. 5 pounds. Yep. All right, so, junk there. Let's see what else we get.
Does that have evolutionary connotations? Yes, it does.
I mean, yeah, reality has evolutionary connotations. Sorry, Randy. I mean, it's just like when we talk about, mass attracting mass, that's because, reality has gravitational implications. Yeah, sorry.
And when they see creatures with individual features like this fish, this paper characterizes those fish features as primitive features, even though the fish is still alive.
Their word for it.
Even though the fish is still alive.
The fish is still alive. That's probably one of the reasons that scientists have started using, was it derived and basal?
Yep, derived and basal.
Okay.
That is why. But also I want to point out that nothing about the word primitive implies that it can't be around now. Like, you ever see those primitive technology YouTube channels? Now, granted, a lot of those are staged, and they're actually off-camera using a lot of modern technology. But whatever, they're usually doing that primarily to save time, so that they don't have to spend, 8 months making one video about making, a mud hut or something. But the thing is, that there are currently people groups around the world who are still using, basically, late Stone Age technology.
Some in New Zealand, actually.
Yeah. That's primitive technology. Why? Because it's technology that started off very early in the, history of human technology. Does it stop being primitive technology because it's being used currently by someone? No. No. Also, similarly, certain aspects of anatomy, provided evolution is true, are primitive in the sense of they represent the original or ancestral condition. For instance, having 5 digits on your hand is the primitive digit count for tetrapods. Humans have a primitive digit count. It's not primitive because suddenly humans are still alive. Yeah. Okay, we got a couple messages here. DM Wing says, Google's first biology definition says they're useless, by the way. Well, that is unfortunate. But also, it's one of the reasons why when you need to look into technical terms in a field of science, it is best to look to definitions given by actual like glossaries in like sources from that field. So
use Google Scholar, because
use
you'll
Google
probably
Scholar.
get more results from people in those fields and not just randos writing pop sci articles.
Mm-hmm. Also, Too Young to Feel Us Old, who's been a member for 9 months and is at the Sauropsid level, thank you very much for their generosity, sends Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, pelagic tunicates, and AIG as a bag of dick emoji, so we will take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
Elusive Man says wisdom teeth are vestigial, and I'm like, yes, I all too well am acquainted with this fact.
Although I do know some humans who have wisdom teeth that came in straight and didn't crowd out their jaws, and they chew with them to this day. So they're vestigial.
Not one of those.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
I had to actually go in for X-rays this week.
I know.
About that specific thing.
You sent me the X-rays for some reason.
It was only just, and I asked if it was TMI, and you said no.
It's not. It's still like a little odd. It's not too much information. I know you have a. I know
Pictures
you have a
of
skull.
bones are cool. Okay, like
fair.
Proof. I have a skeleton underneath this flesh husk, but yeah, my wisdom teeth on the upper jaw did not come in ever, and I thought it was safe. And then the wisdom teeth on my lower jaw, they weren't really a problem when I had braces in high school, but apparently as an adult, they decided they were just gonna lay down and take a nap. So they're sitting in my jaw sideways, and that's not good.
No.
So I'm gonna have to have those taken out, but that's gonna be later this year after I've had other stuff done.
Such a great mouth humans have.
I love this flesh husk. I'm so happy for me personally.
By the way, I do want to say that to the people who got memberships, do go to Discord and connect your Discord account through the connection section of your settings to the YouTube account that you got the gifted membership for, and you will be automatically added to the Discord server for channel members and patrons, where I believe what will happen is you will have access for as long as your membership is active, and then for like another 30-day grace period, after which, if it lapses and you don't renew it, you will be removed from the server. But that's because
we watch Power Rangers every week, and we have render parties, and we post memes.
Lots of
Join
memes.
us.
Yep, we have rooms for talking about tabletop role-playing games, video games. We have rooms for heavy stuff, inventing, conlangs, all sorts of stuff. All right, here we go. More Randy.
It characterizes them as fish. They characterize things as
They characterize them as fish. Well, Randy, it's a fish.
pseudogenes. So how they characterize things is how they are doing the work of evolution, even without strong scientific evidence for it. And since these...
Randy, the scientific evidence is overwhelming, given the fact that, look, this is technically an argument from authority, right? But there's a bit of a heuristic here, which is to say, if everyone, to a high degree of confidence, like when you're saying everyone, and here I'm talking about like more than 99.9% of relevant scientists, everyone agrees on a thing. And all of these people are the people who spent basically their entire adult lives doing nothing but working on this thing, and they all agree with the conclusion. Probably because the evidence is really good. Does that mean it's true? No, not on its own. But you can use a heuristic to say, well, then there's probably really good evidence at least. Now, maybe you'll be the one to overturn it, Randy. Based on your performance so far, probably not. But maybe. You never know.
Yeah.
All right. Blissminder says, oh, right, since you brought it up, Dapper, how long should I expect that to take? I've been a member for a while now, but only linked my accounts the other day. It should be more or less instantaneous.
Yeah.
If it's not, do give me a message and we'll see if we can't troubleshoot that. So, yeah, it should be in the, server name is The Dapper Dino, and the image is just a picture of me, like, from roughly the front.
Face on.
Yeah. You can see the top hat and the tie, so... Yeah. Let me know if that's not a thing later.
Okay, Wayne Rossi just sent $2 and asked you if Godzilla counts as a fish.
With the Godzilla emoji, which means we take a drink for it. That's a good question. Okay. So first, what's a fish? Fish basically means, like, fully aquatic, water-breathing vertebrate. But then it also includes things like mud skippers, which are like semi-aquatic vertebrates that are actinopterygians. Well, yeah, mudkip. So, like, in the taxonomic sense, fish doesn't mean anything. Or if it does, it just means, like, all of, like, sharks and also anything with a bony skeleton that's a vertebrate. Which would mean yes, but so are you. On the other hand, if we restrict fish to mean, like, actinopterygi, chondrichthyes, which is the sharks and rays and skates and whatnot, as well as, like, fully aquatic sarcopterygians, which is what most people end up using it as, then I would say no. I actually happen to think Godzilla is, like, a weird therapsid based on its skeleton, but the real answer is, I mean, Godzilla is a chimerical monster that doesn't actually fit neatly into a real-world taxonomy.
Roasting you in the chat because you told me not too many tangents, and we're going on tangents.
Yeah, you know.
Words are important. The words which are indicators of randomness are also conveying ideas about origins.
None of those words were about randomness, Randy. None of them.
So if we were to play our game once again, very, very quickly, every one of these words I'm going to put up on the screen, I pulled exactly from the scientific literature, and they had to be found in at least 4 papers.
4 papers?
Okay, I was literally going to say, did you really pull these from papers, or did you just pull them off of, like, pop sci articles? So.
Well, my favorite thing is 4 papers. Like, evolutionary biology has, like, thousands of papers published each year. Thousands. Now, I'm not going to say that these
are... 4.
Look, he'll probably pull up some words that are fairly frequent in, like, biology papers, but, like, still, I had to find them in 4 papers. You could probably find just about any word in 4 papers if you look hard enough.
Yeah, probably.
First, purposeless. Second, random.
And he's not providing the context.
Nope.
Love that.
Yeah. So you found 4 papers from somewhere about something that had these words? I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Accidental. Trial and error. Next, broken. Next, unplanned, cobbled together, and finally, messy.
Did he pull these out of just any random paper? Were they from, like, actual peer-reviewed papers? Were they just creationist papers?
Don't know. He just said papers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for the specifics, Randy.
Getting weird, like, Russian Terminator flashbacks. It was a movie all about papers.
One of these words, which the evolutionists are using, are conveying something that they say about the origin
Derpy,
of
Mr. says the words "the" and "a" appear in all these papers. Very suspicious.
Very suspicious. We should stop reading papers in English and switch to just German.
It makes you think. Or you could also switch to most Slavic languages don't use a lot of the definite articles, so...
That's true. Although...
They're less sus.
Although, for me, who likes paleontology papers, the big 2 languages really are German and English.
Yeah.
Not as much Russian language paleontology out there. There isn't.
And every time these words are being used, every time these characterizations are being used, they are indicating a process which no thinking engineer would ever use or would ever point to. And so,
you know why? Do you know why engineers wouldn't use this? Engineers aren't doing biology, Randall.
No, they're not.
Biologists are doing biology.
Yep, and also I would actually point out that in a few cases where genetic algorithms have been used to design things, Actually, kind of sometimes do. So on the one hand, yeah, when an engineer sits down to actually design something, no, they don't use any of those things. But on the other hand, when someone's like, hey, we'll just use a genetic algorithm to create over some time with numerous successive generations using things like random mutation and inheritability, then in some cases, yeah, they do. In fact, yeah, it's a thing.
So in their view, every time they see a genetic change, they characterize it as a random mutation.
And you have not brought forth even an argument for
Prove them
directed.
wrong, Randy.
Right. Find directed mutations, Randy.
It's just I don't like this, therefore it's not true.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the problem is that we've known for about 80 years that mutations are more or less random, and they are definitely not directed by the organism. So, whoops.
I mean, if we could control our own mutations, that would be quite a change.
Yeah. Also, Nestle 20 says NASA has used the quote-unquote evolved antenna, which worked better than manually designed ones. Well, there you go. I mean, yeah. Turns out evolution actually does work, even in engineering sometimes. Dealing for $2 says, you could read those papers in the original Klingon. Ooh, there's a good idea. Actually, I do know
Mark
of...
Smith.
I agree with Silver Harlow. The reason for these vids for Dappers to go on tangents lightly seasoned with actual nonsense of the videos.
I mean, honestly.
I mean, y'all are here for it.
Citation needed. That's my new favorite
thing
that has come up in the community. Citation needed.
Citation needed, yeah. By the way, when it comes to original Klingon, I actually do know of one of the first papers about Oumuamua, which was like an interstellar rock that kind of wandered through the solar system.
It went here.
Yeah, so they tried to name this class of objects, and one of the suggestions that they gave was that the name could be in Klingon, and they gave a translation in Klingon, but they got it wrong. So, they tried to say a lonely stone, and instead they said the stone is lonely, because the difference there is the word order. So if the adjective comes first, then you're saying the thing is the adjective, but if the adjective comes after, then you're saying whatever.
So we dodged a bullet there. It's okay. We'll find more like asteroids and comets and stuff. So.
Yeah, we'll get better at Klingon too. We'll get all the astronomers and physicists a crash course in Klingon like grammar, and then they'll be fine.
Then they consistently and repeatedly in their scientific literature by the best scientists in the world, they consistently use these characteristics over and over and over again from the time you were children all the way through college. Words like purposeless.
Randall.
It's just a
Randall. They're the best scientists in the world. Do you think they might? Just maybe, hear me out here.
Okay.
Know what they're talking about?
No. They cannot.
Bummer.
That is impossible.
Unpossible.
Oh, the Fearmonger official points out, which is true. There are no Klingon papers. Yeah. Yet, so far. Let's add that in there. So, yeah. We'll work on it. I'm going to start the first Klingon language science journal. It's going to be great. I'm going to have a really tough time building up my stable of peer reviewers, but eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to need a lot of groundwork, but hey. Go for it, man.
Someone started up the first English language journal, so
yeah. Could be done.
Broken, random, accidental until they get drilled into your head. And every real thinking biologist automatically assumes when there is a genetic change in terms of an adaptation, they immediately assume it's something that is broken, accidental, whatever. And
no, Randy, it's not an assumption. We've already done experiments on this. This is the conclusion of experimental science. A firm conclusion of experimental science. In fact, part of the entire point of the Lenski long-term E. coli experiment is to test just how contingent evolution is. So, for instance, when they had the CYT plus mutation, which allowed some of the E. coli to basically stop being E. coli because they started metabolizing citrate in the presence of oxygen, which is part of the definition of E. coli, that they can't. when you're checking to see if bacteria are E. coli, one of the things you check for is, will they metabolize citrate in the presence of oxygen? If the answer is yes, then you say, this is not E. coli. But those ones do. So they went back several different generations because, they freeze samples of every... It's not every generation, but it's like every day they freeze samples, so they have a daily sample. And each day is like a few hundred or something like that generations, right? Because bacteria breed fast. And so they went back in this lineage and they started re-experimenting with these as they unfroze them to see how far back the mutations went that allowed them to get this. And they found that you couldn't go past a certain amount of time and get the CIT plus to re-evolve. After a certain amount of time, it stopped happening because the mutation that was the key first mutation in that chain didn't happen. It hadn't happened yet. And it was unlikely to happen again in any given lineage. That's because evolution is heavily contingent. We also have the Luria-Delbruck experiment, which showed very conclusively that bacterial resistance to antibiotics is not induced. It is accidental and then selected for. I'm sorry that reality keeps crapping on your ideas, Randy. But generally speaking, when your made-up nonsense conflicts with reality, reality wins. Just generally. In fact, I think Mark Zuckerberg found that one out recently when he gave up on having a metaverse. You realize, no one cares about your metaverse, Mark. Even
all the people just going, yeah, man, legs are coming. They're totally coming. And then, like, a couple weeks later, Meta's gonna shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Who could have predicted this?
All the people who dropped using his program within, like, 2 months, which was 90-something%.
And that somehow they can be sorted out by natural selection to somehow wield an unconscious, creative process. Bingo.
Assuming the conclusion, objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, stop begging the question. Yes, Nestle20 says, I reject your reality and substitute my own. Yeah, it's a fun tagline for the Mythbusters. It's less useful in science.
Just remember, kids, the difference between science and screwing around is writing down your work.
It's true.
How Darwin takes people to this kind of thinking. And that unconscious creative process, which is so characteristic, so counterintuitive, it is anti-design, and that he gets people, and the theory gets people to believe that you and I and everything on this planet...
Much bad for 50 sex, which, thank you very much for all the sex. I always appreciate when people donate sex. Said, did you know that AIG is an entire bag filled with roosters? I, in fact, did know that, yes. Yep. Little known fact about roosters, if you pet them enough, or long enough, they'll spit at you.
Was somehow brought about through a chaotic, purposeless process. And this indoctrination is repeated so often, and it is told over and over again that people get it into their brains that this is true. Random mistakes.
I mean, oh my God, Randy, we test it. We test it all the time.
Right.
We test it so often that it turned into a theory.
Yep. It's like, the reason people think this is true, there's two big reasons. One is because the people who know what they're talking about found out that it was true through, use of things like math and experiment and observation. And then the people who haven't done that are mostly just saying, hey, I can't be an expert in everything. But the people who are experts, who did spend decades studying this, all basically came to the same approximate conclusion. I'll go with it. It's the same reason why when you take your car to the mechanic, you're not like, I don't know, the mechanic said that it had to do with my transmission fluid, but I think it might actually be the actuator plug on this carburetor spark. Yeah, maybe it is.
Look, I don't have 12 years to go study this thing and become an expert. There's not enough time in the day. I have other stuff to do. People who do spend 15 years of their life, they might know what they're talking about.
Possibly. Also, we're almost at the point where up to half of you have not hit like yet. Do hit like if you're enjoying this. It really does help. It helps boost me in the algorithm, which channels live or die by that. It's kind of tyrannical. It's harsh. I do kind of miss back when you could just grow a YouTube channel by getting subscribers who would then be recommended your video. And then because they watch your videos, it would get recommended to a few more people who would then subscribe. And then it would just recommend your videos to them. now YouTube sometimes just like, hey, good job. Your video has a normal click-through rate, like normal percentage of people who we show this video to are clicking through. Too bad that it's only getting like 1/10 the views of normal. Like, oh, so that just means you're not showing it to people for no reason. That's what that means. Thanks, YouTube. Yeah.
Accidental mutations, broken processes, and then it somehow is sorted out by some natural selective process that when they think about it, that sounds an awful lot like Darwinian evolution.
Well, okay, when you're getting into mutations and drift and things like that, that's not Darwinian, that's post-Darwinian. That's why we have the modern synthesis, because Darwin didn't know about genes or mutations. Those words weren't even invented when he was writing. It would take something like 60 years or something like that before those words were even invented. And then it wouldn't be for another...
And how much more robust these ideas would be and the research would be if he had, for whatever reason, known about DNA and RNA and things like that. It'd be light years ahead.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why very few people call themselves a Darwinist. Darwin didn't know much about evolution, really. He came up with sexual selection and natural selection, and he knew that variation occurred, but he didn't know how. So, yeah.
It sounds nothing like a direct creation by God, because people intuitively know no thinking, rational creator would ever use such a chaotic, terrible process.
Randy, pro tip. When the things indicated by reality contradict your ideas of a direct creation by God, what that doesn't mean is that you get to just say reality doesn't count. What that means is it probably wasn't a direct creation by God. Just throwing that out there. Reality wins when it comes to your personal interpretation of the Bible versus reality. Cyrus Cobra Kinda Official says, Randy thinks the problem is with the carburetor on an electric car. Yeah, basically.
DM Wing in the chat. Hail Darwin, the Pope of Science.
Yes.
Ave Carolus, the facts are with thee.
That's the thing is it's not even technically true that the facts are with him. He got a lot of stuff badly wrong.
Oh yeah, he absolutely did.
Which is why we don't believe those things anymore, because science isn't a religion that follows a prophet. Weird.
Right. Goodness. The first iteration of something is the only true correct version.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe that works for revealed truth, assuming it's true in the first place. Maybe, sure.
Yeah.
Science is not revealed truth. It did not descend from on high. It is contingent on evidence.
That's the link. And it's all carried by these words. And they end up having their materialistic worldview, and therefore they end up having anti-design assumptions, which are their core tenets or their axioms, which interprets how they see things in nature, that every time they see a genetic change, they reflexively, boom, almost automatically, random
We switched to a
broken
new
change,
mic?
loss of function, something is wrong, purposeless,
Yeah, he's just
accidental,
lying right
and
now.
all of these things. And every one of those chaotic phrases is summed up in one word: mutation.
Okay, now do selection.
What changes in your genetic code is, Randy.
Right?
That's what it is. That's literally the definition.
Notice how he doesn't want to talk much about selection, the non-random part of evolution, the part that's also really, really important.
Also, this, like, the mutation selection mechanism isn't atheistic, it's non-theistic. It does not address theism at all.
Yeah.
What?
The theory of evolution is as atheistic as the germ theory of disease or the theory of universal gravitation or the oxygen theory of fire, which is the theory that says fire is in fact not its own substance. It is a rapid chemical reaction using oxidation, which then creates which has exothermic properties. Yeah, weird. Just because, the oxygen theory of fire doesn't mention Igni, the god of fire, who descends upon any wood that you get hot enough, doesn't make it atheistic. Pelagic Tunicate for Truth Official for €5 says, I think that Randy is trying to fit a square peg through a chessboard. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
All right.
Fearmonger Official says, anytime someone refers to evolution as Darwinism, find a way to refer to physics as Newtonianism.
Yes.
And Wayne Rossi follows that up with, down with the Einsteinist heresy.
Dio Wing for $2 says, loss of function, leaving something out, Randy? Yeah. Yeah, there's also gain-of-function mutations. That's a fun thing.
Fish blood in the cold climates.
Yeah, the note
Correct, now it's
ice fish.
antifreeze.
Yep. They took a trypsinogen gene, duplicated it, had a series of mutations, and now that duplicate trypsinogen gene makes an antifreeze protein that allowed them to colonize colder water than their closest relatives can withstand, because jagged ice crystals in your cells are really bad for you.
Yeah,
Bad
not
time.
ideal.
No. Although
Yeah.
amorphous ice is really cool. You ever had amorphous ice? Amorphous ice is what happens when water cools down so fast that the crystals can't form. The easiest way to get it is to just dip water in liquid nitrogen and just flash freezes. And you know otter pops? They're way better when you freeze them in liquid nitrogen. Trust me, I've had them. Yeah.
Mutation. Now, I recognize that some scientists use mutation as just any kind of genetic change, but when you
That's what it is, Randy.
That's what most of them use it for. That's what it is. That's
Taking
the
a drink.
definition.
Now, I know most scientists use mutation to mean mutation, but I want to change the definition. Okay. Cool, Randy.
hear mutation, when most people hear mutation, they're thinking what? Broken, ruined product.
Okay, well, that just makes them
that's
wrong.
why those laymen aren't scientists.
Right. Like, I'm sorry that the average person isn't an expert on genetics, Randy. I don't know what you want me to do about that. Vandelli 1998 for $5 says, everyone knows once you accept evolution, you have to denounce belief in any deities and quit any religious organization you belong to. Yeah, Shanti, sorry, you're not Jewish anymore because you believe in evolution now. You're done.
No.
It's time to turn in your Star of David necklace and that Hanukkah behind you. You gotta get rid of it. Hold on. You also better start eating bacon again.
On those things. And that, brothers and sisters, is inherently and fundamentally anti-design. Because no real engineer
no one
would
cares.
do this.
Yeah, no one
But
cares.
how much time do I have left?
Hope,
if I
Randy.
have,
Hope and seed, man.
7 minutes? 7 minutes. Perfect.
Oh, God.
Then that's coupled
What can you possibly have left to say? Oh, he is going to say selection. Okay.
with their idea of selection. Origin of creatures, therefore,
No.
point number 6. Anti-design explanations. Anti-design explanations are inherently and will always be anti-theistic explanations.
It's
Oh my
not
God.
theistic. It's non-theistic. Science does not deal with theism.
Yeah, we're taking a drink.
It cannot. It cannot.
So
You cannot test any gods
the thing is,
with the scientific method.
in order to make this claim, you have to say that basically any time science explains anything without reference to design, it is trying to spread not just the lack of belief in God, but the disbelief in God. Right? And also that it's trying to get rid of a religion, because anti-theism isn't just being against the belief in God, it's generally being against the existence of religions per se. So, most creationists do not think that God sat and purposefully designed every single snowflake. They accept that snowflakes form as a result of the outcomes of the laws of physics and chemistry working on water molecules in clouds in the atmosphere. That's an anti-design explanation. Okay, so do you think Randy would advocate for the direct special creation of every snowflake? I don't think he would.
Maybe.
Maybe he would. Maybe he would. I haven't heard him do so. But also, like, that's just, I mean, true all over the place, right? Like, when magma cools and you get, like, geodes, those are explained without any recourse to design. You know? You don't have to worry about Hades, the god of the underworld and wealth, because that's where wealth comes from, is the underworld, obviously. Like, sitting there and being like, oh, today I'm going to make a geode, and it's going to be purple, and it's going to be 3 feet long, and then, like, I don't think that that's how we explain geodes, is by Hades going down and designing geodes. Does that mean that geology is anti-theist? Are geologists trying to get rid of religion from public life, or just existence? I mean, yeah, some of them might be, but I don't think that's characteristic of the whole lot. I know religious geologists. I also know non-religious geologists, but I actually don't know any anti-theist geologists. So...
They're probably out there, but
Oh, yeah,
who cares?
probably.
Doesn't matter, because geology, like the principles of geology, stand and fall on their own merits.
By the way, the book, The Principles of Geology, by Lyell. Lifelong Christian.
Yep. How about that? Plot twist.
Weird. Punk for $5 says, every apologist I've ever seen has tried to change the definition of words to pretend things mean something other than what they actually mean. Yeah, it's a pretty common tactic. It's okay to have stipulative definitions for a discussion, right? Like, as long as you are clear that it's stipulative and you understand that people outside the discussion may not be using it that way. But when you use a stipulative definition and you don't make that clear that it's stipulative, that's when it gets into dishonest territory. And that's what Randy's doing. April Van Ryn, who's been a member for 2 months and is at the annual level, says he learned everything he knows from X-Men comics. You know,
I wish, because then
yeah.
you'd actually be getting some stuff right.
Yeah, plus he might not be so, homophobic.
Yeah,
It's,
no kidding.
Spoiler alert.
Lots of X-Men are the gay.
Not only that, but like the entire existence of the comic is basically a metaphor for oppressed people,
In that marginalized group tends to shift every several decades. But yeah, I mean...
Yeah. Well, that's why I said, like oppressed people rather than just gay.
Marginalized identities, stuff like that.
Yep. Like in the 80s, it was a pretty good metaphor for, the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah, that was like the height of the AIDS pandemic, and people were like,
Yep. So I wish Randy paid more attention to X-Men. He might not get evolution right, but he'd probably at least be less of a dick.
Yeah.
You can't get around it. They will always be this way. And how Darwin does things is he always reverses the engineering reality of purpose-driven targeted solutions with random hit and miss outcomes.
No, he doesn't, because he had no idea how mutation worked. He just went with selection, which is not random.
That is anti-design. He inverts the cause of organismal change and form from internal to external, and then he ends up personifying nature as a substitute agent.
He literally doesn't. In fact, virtually any discussion of natural selection I've been able to find that isn't just a quick dictionary definition talks about how even though there's some personification happening linguistically, like in the language we use, it's important to note that nature is not a person, that is not making any personal decisions. And also this is getting back to, remember when Randy basically said, anything that's the subject of a verb must be a person? Which might be the dumbest take I have ever heard. And of course, he then extended it to basically anything that isn't a person that's used as the subject of a verb. Maybe that doesn't exist, which is just like, okay. Strawberry Vein for $5 says, I figured it out. Young Earth creationists think lying is good because they believe that the very foundation of reality is God lying to them through creation.
See, it's young, but it just looks old, you guys. It just looks old.
I mean, you don't actually get that many explicit on phallus anymore, but not Jason Lyle. No, it was Jason Lyle. Yeah, he's actually getting pretty close because as more and more James Webb stuff comes out that makes the universe look, actually old, which he predicted would not happen. He predicted that there would be no difference in how the universe looked at extreme differences. Yeah, he's been like, well, maybe that's just how God did it. Because like one of his things was always like, oh, I don't like the idea of the light being made in situ, like already traveling to Earth, because that means that evident events like stellar explosions that happened just were fake. That's God lying. And so then people were like, okay, well, what about this?
We can't lie.
What about these two galaxies that are merging? And it would have taken them several 100 million years to get to this configuration if they started as separate galaxies. No, God just created the merging. Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Contradict yourself a little bit there. You're back to omphalism, but sure, why not?
No, because reasons.
Yeah, right.
Agent. So, how does he do that? How does he end up going to this? Well, I'm going to skip a couple slides because you have them in your note, and they're going to explain the externalism, which we are already able to cover. They explain the externalistic worldview. These are wonderful quotes.
I like that picture.
That is cool. But also,
please read through them because they very succinctly explain it. But then we're going to go to the part in your notes which has a big star on it.
Okay, Linda Patterson says, I have trouble understanding Yek logic. That's because of that last word. It's an inaccurate thing to describe what they're doing as logic, yeah.
Yeah.
You could say Yek thought, but calling it logic is extremely generous. Silver Harlow, who's been a member for 14 months, wow, and is at the tetrapod level, says, not a Darwinist, but I had a Darwin fish on my car. Hey, that's cool.
I love seeing the little Tux kitty in your avatar.
The
Those
Tux
little
kitty is
sock paws.
adorable.
I love Tuxies.
Yeah, look, the Darwin fish, I think, is an appropriate response to creationist attempts to reject science, especially when it comes to actual classrooms. Now, if it weren't happening, I do think it would be a little weird to counter a religious symbol with a symbol indicating your advocacy for a scientific theory, because, you know, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense outside the creation-evolution debate. But since that is a major debate in the United States, and to a lesser extent elsewhere in the Anglosphere, and even in some cases in Spanish-speaking countries, yeah, it seems reasonable. Although, did I tell you I actually looked for Spanish language creationist content to cover, and it's all so boring. Every Spanish language creationist I can find is just like English-speaking creationists, but 20 years ago. They're just playing like 20-year catch-up. And English-speaking creationists are usually already like 80 to 100 years out of date.
They're already like 80 years behind, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, no.
See, we're still quoting from the origin of species because, you know, truth is revealed from on high, and if it's not revealed in the very first publication, then it's not even part of that theory.
Seriously, like a few months ago, I spent an entire day listening to Spanish language creationism. And I was like, this is the most boring thing. I just can't keep doing it. Although, you know what? I actually have a easier time understanding Spanish language, like scientific stuff in areas I'm familiar with, because so many of the words are just directly like, it's the same word, but ending with a Spanish ending. Whereas like in everyday conversation, I'm like, no, I don't know all these words.
Yeah.
On it. Darwin added a vital element of agency.
Just drink.
In his framework by projecting onto nature an intelligence and volition that we almost have there. And Richard Lewontin, he was a colleague of Stephen Jay Gould's, a professor at Harvard University. He pointed out that Darwin's most influential example of pointing to agency in nature was this quote, but he had some of the most incisive comments about selection that have ever been put into print. In his book, The Design Revolution, William Dembski said this: in short, evolutionary biology...
William Dembski, by the way, is a design proponent from the Discovery Institute. And he is, in fact...
Great.
Yeah. He is, in fact, what you might call a hack fraud. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, the Discovery Institute's full of those.
Yeah, it really is. Professor Dave has done a pretty good expose on a whole bunch of them. I also have a pretty long and reasonably popular, for me at least, series on Stephen Meyer, who's a DI guy.
Stephen Meyer is a dishonest hack.
Yep. Yep.
I would go so far as to call what Professor Dave did to the DI guys as excoriating.
Yeah, that seems fair. And
Eviscerated.
Look, they deserve it. Do we have some Trojan sources there? Possibly, but I'm trying to get through Galuza.
Needs a designer
is memorializing their kitty.
Oh. Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
9206. No. One of my neighbors has kitty cats, and they were sitting in the window sunning the other day when I came home, and one of them is just the most handsome tuxedo, and I had to stop and take like all the photos.
Yeah.
He's a very handsome kitty cat. Very dapper. Very classy. Yeah.
To coordinate the incidental changes that hereditary transmission passes on from one generation to the next, and there's only one naturalistic candidate on the table, to wit, natural selection. Indeed, it's no accident that the word selection and the word intelligence are etymologically related. The lek in selection has the same root as lig in intelligence. Both.
I'm going to need a citation on that one.
Hey, Randy, why don't you lig my balls?
Oh, but also, yeah, we need a citation on that claim there, Randy. All right, Conservative Mirror for 7 Beaver Bucks says, Dapper, I don't want to misspecies you. Are you a Ceratosaurus or a Tyrannosaurus or both? First, those aren't species, those are genera, but I'm a Ceratosaurus. The species designation would be C. nasicornis, Ceratosaurus nasicornis. That is the specific species.
Pretty awesome that they got that, like, immediately, Ceratosaurus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What's the horns, right? There aren't that many horned theropods.
Carnotaurus, Ceratosaurus.
Both of which are ceratosauroids. Yeah. So.
I'm
Right.
still really disappointed that the LA Natural History Museum had like 1 million Carnotaurus specimens and not one of a Ceratosaurus.
It's not even a book with a Ceratosaurus in it. It was a little disappointing. They did have
Nothing in the gift shop, no toys.
They did have a cool whale, which then later appeared on Dapper Reacts.
Yes, they did. That was in fact very cool.
Yep.
And ceratopsian skulls that were almost as tall as I am.
Yeah, I did like it that, like, I think that was the day when you realized that, yeah, Triceratops is like the size of an elephant. Like, it's a big boy.
They're massively just large.
Yeah.
Large.
Like you might think, oh, it's like the size of a bison. No. No.
No. I knew just kind of vaguely that they would be big. You know, like maybe water buffalo big or hippo big, because those are pretty large. Maybe even rhino big.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I see those skulls and I'm like 5'5", 5'6", I'm like, okay, if their head's as tall as me,
yup.
those are sizable. And
Yeah.
I sent my mom some of those photos, and she went, "Oh my gosh, I just can't believe how massive these things were." And I'm like, I know.
From the same Indo-European root, meaning to gather and therefore to choose. Now everybody says that that people had the idea of natural.
Wait. He is acknowledging that those words come from an Indo-European root.
Mm-hmm.
So he's at least passingly familiar with linguistics and how Indo-European is the root of a huge amount of languages that are spoken in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, he's a younger creationist who absolutely believes in the Tower of Babel and would say that all the languages came from Babel. Randy.
So I think what Randy would probably say is that the major language families, like the ancestor language of those families, came out of Babel. So that what happens is you have the Tower of Babel, and then the languages that split off from that are like Proto-Afroasiatic, Proto-Indo-European, Proto-Sino-Tibetan, things like that. That's probably what he would say.
Sure.
Yep.
I'm like, nah.
Yeah. Now, ignore the fact that this would actually have noticeable effects in that all of those languages would actually have evidence of common terms for things like parts of nature that are common to the area around Babel, which they do not. But one of the reasons that we know where certain language families originated is because their words for certain types of animals and plants are actually cognates across the language. So, for instance, we know that, like, Indo-European languages probably came from around the Black Sea because they don't have native terms for things like lions or tigers or elephants, but they do for things like bear and deer and whatnot. Yeah. Also, for like Sino-Tibetan languages, they have cognate terms for things like lions and bears and things, but not for things like elephants. So, like,
or
not
camels?
Yeah, not camels. Well, I'm not sure about camels and Sino-Tibetan, but like, yeah, like we can tell. Or similarly, Afroasiatic.
Camelids, like, you might get like the pack animals. Like, I don't want to say llamas because llamas and alpacas are
like
just
dromedary camels.
Major, like, yeah, I was gonna say like dromedary camels because like alpacas, that's New World.
Yeah.
But those are kind of.
We can tell the only language family that has a reasonable chance from originating near where Babel would have been is Afroasiatic, which probably originated somewhere in North Africa or the Middle East. We're not sure. But at the time that it would have been spoken, those places would have had almost identical fauna anyway. There were hyenas in the Middle East, there were lions in the Middle East, there were elephants, so, Anyway.
Selection before Darwin, they did not. Nobody, no creationist, was applying intelligent ability to nature. And this is what Dempsey goes on to add. Before Darwin, the ability to choose was largely confined to designing intelligences, that is, to conscious agents.
No, it's still there. Intelligent design isn't literally choosing, Randy. We're taking a drink. The fact that you don't understand it, the fact that personification is an analogy and not a literal truth, is just you not having the level of intelligence that the average 10-year-old has. That's a pretty extreme level of dumb. And it's to the point where I have trouble
People draw,
thinking.
like, the people, like, when you're kids, you draw a sun, and it always has sunglasses on it. So, like, that's definitely ascribing, personhood to the sun. I mean,
Definitely.
Why would the sun need sunglasses?
Not because it's fun, because you literally think that the sun has eyes, but the sun is bright, so it needs sunglasses. Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense since the light is coming internally, and sunglasses block the light from the external.
It'd be like, lights coming out of you, which is like laser eyes.
That's how the Greeks thought that eyesight worked. They thought that light came out from your eyes and then like hit things, and then that reflected back to your eyes.
Well, if you're Shimon Bar Yochai, it probably does.
Well, there you go.
All three of us in the world that are going to get that joke right now that are watching the stream, you're welcome.
That could reflect deliberately upon the possible consequences of their choices in that way. Does that make sense? Of course it does. You wouldn't.
The Fearmonger says also conlangs are a thing. Yes, conlangs are a thing. We have a special text channel for conlangs on my Discord server, which you can get by being a member or a patron. Capitalism time.
Apply selective ability to the chair you're sitting on or to the carpet you're walking on. It would only be to conscious things. He went on to say this: Darwin's claim to fame was to argue that natural...
I want to try and get through him, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to
Can you turn him on like super fast speed? Because I am so done with this dude. It's been weeks.
Forces lacking any purposefulness or provision of future possibilities likewise have the power to choose via natural selection. In ascribing the power to choose to unintelligent natural forces, Darwin perpetuated the greatest intellectual swindle in the history of ideas. Nature has no power to choose.
Flash Tunicate says, so Sun is Cyclops from X-Men. Yes. Yes, the sunglasses are there to protect you, not the sun.
Yes.
If I were to ask you in this room, how many of you have been swindled? You've all been swindled. I was swindled.
I was swindled by young Earth creationism. Yeah, you're being swindled this moment. Well, you know, we'll take a drink. He's right. They are being swindled.
Or / self-aware wolves.
Right.
For decades, I went about talking about what natural selection could do or what natural selection couldn't do. This would have been my typical explanation. Well, natural selection is a real thing, but it's just limited. Natural selection is real, but it can only do this. You notice what? I'm also projecting abilities for natural selection to do it. I never did say, you know what? Darwin's fundamental mistake is that he compared nature to a human breeder. But human breeders have a real brain, but nature doesn't. Therefore, his analogy was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. That's what I...
Way to go, Randy. You found out where the analogy fails, like all analogies do. That's not special. Like, literally, no analogy is perfect, because to be a perfect analogy, you would just have to analogize something to itself, which isn't an analogy anymore. Now you're just being literal.
And then you wouldn't need an analogy. You would just be telling someone what it is.
The fact that someone found out where an analogy broke down is not special. It doesn't also make the analogy false where it doesn't break down.
Wow.
Goodness.
Should have said, nature has no power to choose. By projecting onto nature, all Darwin did was try to get one god out of the picture and put another god in. He tried to get one agent out, and he tried to slip another agent in, and so...
He did this before he even became an...
He literally did
taking a
this.
drink.
Oh my god, I can't.
Also, if you read The Origin of Species, it's full of references to a creator. It's really not an atheist book.
Instead of attributing agency to God, we end up attributing agency to Mother Nature.
Take a drink.
And therefore, we're here the products of Mother Nature. That's what I should have been saying.
You just called it Mother Nature, so you're personifying it, Randy.
I know, right? Next, next he's going to use nature as the subject of a verb.
Well, it's a person who called Mother Nature, so...
Yeah.
If he's ever said Father Time,
we're all done.
Personified it. Mm-hmm. We're all done. Argument invalid.
Kronos is real. Randy Galuza said so.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of the people you see in that picture, they're all atheists. Darwin swapped one mystical agent...
What picture?
God for another one, natural selection. You know what good atheists like? They like to take their atheism straight. That means they don't want to get one God
talking about? What is it? Good First of all, what's a good atheist? Second of all, take it straight? Is this a drink? What are we doing?
No, it just means no gay atheists. That's what we're going for.
Well, good luck with that.
Right.
Especially in, like, was it paleontology? That feels gay as hell.
Well, at least paleo Twitter is. Paleontology tends to be a fairly more, like, representative cross-section of, like, sexual identities, but for some reason, like, the paleo art and, like, paleo enthusiasm communities, they're pretty gay.
This is me shilling for Fossil Daddy, because if you really want some really excellent,
he's got some good stuff.
Bone digging up, hit that up.
In fact, some of his digs where he finds very, very common things like shark teeth or trilobites, he'll actually send them to people who sign up for such services. So you can get
you can pay him per fossil if he finds like really big, shells and stuff, and you found like a gajillion of those. He'll just be like, if you are a patron or if you want to make a donation, I'll send it to you. I'm like, fossils. Yeah,
now I want to put one thing about private fossil ownership. Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of private fossil ownership. It takes valuable finds out of the realm of scientific investigation. However, when it comes to trilobites and shark teeth, there are so many of those that they couldn't possibly all be studied by scientists, nor would scientists care to, because there's only so much you can learn from like the 18 billionth shark tooth of Megalodon. Like, each Megalodon shark shed thousands of teeth, and there were millions and millions of Megalodons throughout time. So there are billions of Megalodon teeth out there.
And
Science doesn't need every
he
one of them.
knows enough about which specimens he would definitely not sell, because he would know which ones are significant and that he'd, get tested and submit to
Strawberry Vein for $2 says Gatheism confirmed.
atheism confirmed.
Oh.
God in. They want to be true atheists. And so, after people complaining to Darwin,
True
he just
atheists.
substituted another god. By 1868, he said, the term natural selection isn't.
No one was complaining to Darwin about needing a new god so they could be atheists.
No.
Which is kind of not the point of being an atheist. The point of being an atheist is not that you need a new god, it's that you don't believe there are any gods, or more formally that you believe that there are not any gods is the more technical definition from philosophy, but whatever.
I just remembered that's a good atheist or a true atheist would be someone who's a theist.
Oh, right. Armando Calvo let us know about that one. Yeah.
A bad one, as it seems to imply conscious choice. But this will be disregarded after a little familiarity. I have also often...
Also, to anyone watching this on times 2 in the future, I'm sorry, because we're already watching Randy on times 2, so he's going to be on times 4 for you.
personified the word nature, for I have found it difficult to avoid this ambiguity. No, duh. You can't take things which look highly engineered and try to give away from an agent.
You can. Darwin did it successfully. We'll take a drink.
Therefore, we took God's agency out, and here's the quiz. He substitute what as the substitute agent for God? Nature. Natural selection. Natural selection is a means, but he's actually pointing to nature, an externalistic force which can act on, favor creatures. By the way, where did Darwin introduce mysticism right from the beginning? His book says, On the Origin of Species, it was on the origin of species. And then the subtitle says what? Or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Nobody focuses on racism. He's not talking about races at all.
Objection! Where in the hell was he introducing mysticism?
Yeah, no, nowhere. We'll take a drink for that, because that's super dumb. But also, I think Randy's about to say that Darwin wasn't talking about human races when he says races, which is true. So we might be able to take a drink for this. Or true. Logan Fish says I'm watching on halftime. Oh, okay.
It's a circularity. It's the preservation of favored races. Well, how do you know that they were favored? It's because they were what? Preserved. And why were they preserved? Because they were... And how do you know that they were favored? Because they were preserved. Okay.
Okay, so this is basically just bringing up the fact that this is not a technically worded phrase, which is true, it's not. But yeah, we can measure fitness without just saying the things that are fit are just the things that don't die. We actually have measures of fitness involved with relative reproductive success, which is not based on survival. Then we can look at within a population who has the highest fitness, which then leads to the most contribution to the future generation's genetic material. Like, the fact that the slogan version of evolutionary biology is a little bit weird if you take it overly literally, isn't really a problem for the actual technical field of evolutionary biology and population genetics. I don't know why I need to say this, but apparently I do. All right, here we go.
And here's the mysticism. You can favor, I can favor, God can favor. Can nature favor? No.
Apparently. I don't really care.
It's a mystical action by an agent. That's why Greg Roffin, a professor in
It's
UCLA,
not
says
mystical.
the trick is, he's an atheist, by the way.
Yeah,
how
take
do you
a
talk about
drink.
natural selection without applying the rigidity of law? We use it almost as an active participant, almost like a
You know
God.
what?
In fact, you could substitute the word God for natural selection in a lot of evolutionary writings, and you would think you're listening to a theologian. It's a routine we know doesn't exist.
I favor Raz Cranberry LaCroix over the other flavors, so that's a mystical decision that I made.
Very mystical, but also I don't know how you could possibly do that since none of them have flavor.
We teach it anyway. Genetic mutation is some active force choose the most favorable one. Another atheist, Robert Reed, says, Indeed, the language of neo-Darwinism is so careless that the word divine plan could be substituted for selection pressure in any popular work in the biological literature without the slightest disruption in the logical flow of the argument. Selection pressure is now given a metaphorically creative sense by modern biologists who ought to be flagellating themselves for selected pressures. Wow.
Okay.
Lynn Margulis, quoted in Susan Mazur's book, said Darwin was brilliant to make natural selection a sort of godlike term, an expression who could replace God. Who did it? Created life forms. He made it easy for his contemporaries to think and verbalize Mr. Big Omnipotent God in the sky, picking out those he wants to keep. He has been conceived of as the natural selector. He throws the others away. And finally, Stephen Talbot said, Natural selection is always what? Doing things. That's what I said. Always look for the verb. And so we hear about the mechanism of selection as well as the forces and pressures
Just
that operate.
drinking
We
for
learn
the
that natural
verb
selection
thing.
shapes the bodies and behaviors of organisms, builds specific features, targets or acts on particular genome regions, favors or disfavors, or even punishes various traits. Evolutionary biologists routinely speak of natural selection as if it were an agent. Natural selection becomes rather like an occult power of the pre-scientific age. And finally, this one sums it up perfectly. This gentleman in his essay on natural selection says, one source of the trouble is that Darwin liked the term natural selection because it could be used as a substantive governing a verb. Stop right there. I'll just explain it in 20 seconds. A substantive is a real thing. I can govern verbs. You can govern verbs. He takes a concept of nature as if it can govern a verb. It means as if it can do something like a verb. It can do something.
Yes,
This is
Randy.
literally
We
just
know you're
argument from grammar.
Yep, we know you're bad at grammar and language, Randy. It's okay.
And therefore, it says at the end, but such uses appear to reify, even deify, natural selection as an agent.
Appear.
And all this time, you and I have been using this phrase so innocuously. We've been saying, well, selection is real, but it can only do this. You know, we should have been saying all along, selection was Darwin's way to project selective ability onto nature, which it doesn't have. And when he projects it onto nature, he projects intelligence and agency so that nature can act like a substitute God. That's what it is, and it's false. And we miss it. If I were to look at a statue, say this statue can select or favor or whatever, you would immediately see it as idolatry. We say, that's an idol. That's an idol. Darwin doesn't hold up a statue. He holds up nature.
I'm continuing to increase the speed because as long as he keeps saying things that he's already said that we've already refuted, I'm just going to keep speeding him up because I don't really want to hear it 18 million times the same dumb point. But Savage Cobra kind
of official for $5 says Diogenes is about to bust in with a sieve screaming, "Behold, an agent!"
Perfect. Oh, thank goodness for Diogenes.
Yes. Imagine being so legendary at shitposting that you're being remembered like almost 3,000 years later. Like, that is legend stuff.
Yeah, it's not very often that you get a shitpost so amazing. Touchpad for 50 seconds.
Survive the test of time.
A touchpad for 50 seconds says, is sending sex to a dinosaur considered an act of gaytheism? Only if you're both an atheist and gay and of the gender that that particular dinosaur happens to be attracted to. You have to meet all of those. And I don't think you can confirm all of those. So.
Trail Mix slaps quote, "This baby can hold so much mining."
Oh, back underground, boys. We got quotes to mine.
Which is harder to see. They attribute to nature the same thing that they attributed to
on Monday
and
quote mining on
Tuesday. It is a substitute creator. That is how he slips in atheistic thinking, and we as Christians should find it repugnant. We should. So thank you so much for your time.
And we're going to have David Reeves is going to share with us 21 verses backed by science. This is available
in
the back
break, man.
And I'm going to grab mine as I'm by David Reeves.
Once David Reeves comes on, we're going to take a break.
Hello again.
We're going to go
right.
Okay, but I can't get the whole Kent Hovind thing. We're going pasta mining. Now we've got quote mining.
That's true. He's for those of you who don't know about the pasta mining, go check out the when we read his dissertation. Because at one point he seems to say that pasta comes out of the ground and that you could mine for it or something. It's very confusing. Like hey guys, I found a rich ricotta vein here.
Man, and you changed the name of the stream like midway through.
Oh yeah, I did.
Going pasta mining, and I'm like,
because it was such a ridiculous statement.
oh god, I cannot. Oh, we need a break. I need a break.
Yeah, we're taking a break.
Snack.
We're taking a break. We will be back in just a few minutes, everybody. Please hold on. And in the meantime, please enjoy some ads because, again, capitalism. And also, the musical stylings of one Beethoven. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me through the break. Those of you who did, wasn't quite everyone, but it was almost everyone, so I do appreciate that. Real quick before we jump back into it with David Reeves, the man who's actually on the thumbnail. Part of the reason I pushed through Randy is so that the thumbnail wouldn't be a lie and I wouldn't have to redo it. So real quick before we go there, though, I want to say, hey, guys, this channel is almost entirely supported through direct viewer support. The Google AdSense that actually comes in from ads and YouTube Premium view time, it's virtually nothing compared to what you guys help out with via joining the Patreon, super chats, membership gifts, just choosing to become a member, all that stuff. So if you want to continue helping the channel and make sure that it continues to grow, continues to stay on the air with, a very consistent 3 videos a week. I think it's been close to a year since that hasn't happened. And then Saturday is the only off day that has happened in years. I think it's been about 3 years since we had less than 2 videos in a week. So if you want to keep that going, the best way to do that is to join the Patreon or the channel membership. You can get discounts on Patreon for going annually. I think it's a 12% discount. You get early access to, I think, about 5 months worth of videos at this point. Like I said earlier, a new video should be coming out today or tomorrow. I'm actually right now downloading the frames for the next video, the final set of 10,000 or so frames out of the 339,000 frames. I said to Vishanti earlier, and it's definitely true. In a week, I do more CGI than most Hollywood movies do in 3 years. And it's not even close. Like, you add up, like, oh, hey, how much time did, like, the CGI dinosaurs appear in, like, Jurassic World? It's like 8 minutes. I'm doing 49 minutes of CGI dinosaur soon. Is it Jurassic World quality? No, but it's still 49 minutes of it. So, and that's to go into, like, an hour and 6-minute video. So, yeah, it's almost all me. But also, if a monthly or an annual pledge isn't your thing, or you just can't afford it, or you just want to help out real quick, there are also other options. I have a merch store linked in the description. It's a Teespring. I have a wish list. Bent also has a wish list if you like Bent Hovend. Recently, someone got him the last of the doggy diapers he wanted because one of the dogs here is a very old lady, and she needs some assistance with not just relieving herself literally wherever she is because she's no longer able to control that. So, thank you very much for that. But also on my list, there's a bunch of stuff like RPG books. No D&D because I'm basically done with Wizards of the Coast after the Pinkerton debacle.
Literally sending the Pinkertons.
Yeah, the actual... I almost did it. The actual Pinkertons. But yeah, with that, we'll keep going. This is not supposed to be, the big, long commercial time. Here we go. Let's get back into David Reeves.
Over this brief period of time, over the next few moments, I want to go over a few things. This is the title of my second book. It's called 21 Verses Backed by Science. I kind of challenged myself. Well,
I could find probably more than 21 verses in the Bible backed by science because a lot of it's pretty basic, like such and such went such and such a place. Like, humans exist. People with this name existed. These places existed. That seems reasonable. But sure, 21. Yeah.
Strawberry Vein asks for $5. What's your opinion on the plausibility of the Permian Basin superorganism?
Very, very, very low plausibility. And actually, I'd actually pause specifically to answer that question. But for those of you who don't know, that's the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park. Search for that on YouTube. You'll get all sorts of cool videos about it. Look, the problem is that there's no way to realistically coordinate an organism that big because, travel time for nerve signals and whatnot have, like, a limited range. So the idea that you could coordinate a, like, Texas-sized organism, it's not realistic. Now, Roger, on the other hand, from Mud Fossil U, was totally ready to buy into that being an entirely real thing and that there was an actual defunct national park made of an gigantic superorganism. Yeah. It was just like, Roger, come on. But then, who else would I expect to buy into Mystery Flesh Pit National Park? No questions asked.
Tailor-made for Roger.
I know. Which, by the way, my Roger series still hasn't come out. I think it's the next series after the current one.
That's been forever ago.
Yeah, well, like I said, if you join the Patreon or the memberships, you get like 5 months of content. Just immediately. You just get to watch it. You can spend the next, like, 2 days watching Dapper Dino stuff. So, all right, here we go.
Could I just go through scriptures and randomly start reading verses? Not randomly, but just start looking at different verses and asking the question, is this scientifically accurate?
Yeah, you could. And I'll be honest, most of the time the answer will be yes, because most of the stuff that happens in the Bible isn't, like, particularly extraordinary. Like, could some guy be tricked at the altar by, like, the woman he wanted to marry and, like, being replaced by her sister in a veil? Yeah.
If she's wearing a veil, yeah.
Yeah. That seems plausible. That seems like a thing that could happen. Like, okay, could some guy leave his family over in Ur to go travel to Canaan? Yeah. That's like, if you're just, your basis is like, could this part of the Bible be scientifically plausible? The answer is almost always going to be yes, as it turns out, because very little that happens in the Bible. Yeah, do floods happen
all the time?
Yeah. All right. Cypress Cobra Kind of Official has just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Smitty, Stacy C, Attila Concisao, I think. Look, I'm bad at Portuguese. I'm really bad at Portuguese. I once actually spent like a good part of a day trying to read through a Portuguese language paleontology paper by a creationist. It was an actual nightmare.
With the woman that we debunked?
Yeah, the Gabriella Haynes. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Her work was in entomological paleontology. And then she was like, I know about birds. No, you do not.
Dear reader, she did not.
Yeah. Also, Sandino Flores and Fragbag75. Thank you very much. All right, well, we will take some drinks right now. So here we go. Here's 1, 2.
Jillian Wren says, I had Mormons try to convince me yesterday that archaeologies confirmed the Book of Mormon.
Okay, I have to stop drinking.
Things that definitely did not happen.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And here's
archaeology does not, in fact, confirm the Book of Mormon.
In fact, actually, when I found out about one of the more famous Mormon archaeological hoaxes, by which I want to be clear, I do not mean that Mormons just typically engage in archaeological hoaxes. I mean hoaxes of archaeological finds inspired by Mormonism. Most Mormons are not out hoaxing artifacts. Please do not confuse me. Anyway, but I found out about one of the biggest ones, which was some allegedly Hebrew artifacts found in a trash dump in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I was in a hotel room in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I was like, holy shit. I'm there right now. Which, in case you don't know, Las Cruces, New Mexico is like, it's a little town that's basically like one main street and a few side streets for like neighborhoods that's south of Albuquerque, which, to be fair, most of New Mexico is south of Albuquerque. That doesn't say much. But yeah, it's like a nothing little town. The only thing that's only recently made it significant is that they're getting a data server. And I'm not actually allowed to tell you whose data center it is, except they put it on their sign, which is unusual for data centers. Normally they don't do that. They're very open about it.
Probably shouldn't.
No, you shouldn't. In fact, I'm still technically under an NDA. They could sue me if I revealed who it is, but like, you could just like look. You could just check. It's on their signs. They're not quiet about it. It was also the time that I was hanging out with my my Mexican coworker, and they were telling us about the Mexican guy who was showing us around was speaking in Spanish as to how great it was to work there, trying to get my Mexican coworker to work there. And then my coworker's like, he can understand you, right? And the guy like turned pale, and I was like, yep. Like, that beer in the fridge in the break room sure does sound good. Want to play one of those video games you were talking about? And he was like, oh, you can. Like, yep. Mm-hmm. I'm very white, but that doesn't mean I don't know any Spanish. Whoops. All right, here we go.
There was a very old radio serial. It was a radio program by a certain name.
Okay.
Then they took that radio program and they made it into a television series that was very, very popular. This has been many, many years ago. It was by the name of Father Knows Best. Have anyone heard of that one?
Yes, we've heard of it.
Again, it's a little bit before my time, but the concept remains the same. There is so much truth behind that phrase.
He's going to compare the Father and Father Knows Best to God, isn't he?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I started researching for my second book, I realized, well, if the Bible is what it claims to be, the inspired Word of God, and Father certainly knows best, the Father of the universe, well then by implication, the Bible should also know best in every single thing it says. It should
Okay.
No.
So first, I'm going to take a quick drink. Then I'm going to read Strawberry Vein Super Chat, and we're going to talk about things like what it means when the Bible says all Scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching and reproach, and also things like is the Bible a single work? We're going to talk about a few things like that. So here's my drink. Here's Strawberry Vein. Sorry, you are not Savage Cobra kind of official. That's a different person. I assume I've never actually seen them in person in the same room at the same time, so maybe Strawberry Vein and Savage Cobra kind of official are actually the same person, but I doubt it. Anyway, Strawberry Vein says for $5, we know that the superorganism can create amalgamations. So what if it's just millions of years of smaller amalgamated animals? Chessmate, Dapper. Good point. Good point. That's a good chessmate. I concede you have chest.
Octopuses have like nerves and stuff like all over their body. Their brain cells are spread out, so why not the mystery flesh pit?
Sure, you know what? Mystery flesh pit confirmed. Let's all get our own abyssal copepod, which has creepy, weird human hands.
I'll meet you in the amniotic springs, baby.
The bottom part? Or just the safer family parts?
The safer family part.
Okay.
I gotta keep you monetized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be broadcasting our trip to the amniotic springs. That would be something that we could like talk about elsewhere, like maybe put it in a Patreon post. Those are allowed to not be safe for work. I know, because there's a lot of not safe for work artists who get paid on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher, Kennedy Atheist, who's been a member for 4 months, says AIG is a hockey haberdashery of hard hand tool handlers. Nice. And a Palachi Tunicate emoji, which almost negates the drink, but not quite. Okay, so when the Bible says that all Scripture is God-breathed and useful for reproach and teaching, or teaching and reproach, I don't remember, it doesn't matter. That is, at least traditionally, Paul. I don't remember whether or not that particular bit is actually reasonably attributable to Paul. Doesn't matter here. But we have to think, okay, what is meant by...
link to McClellan's video on this?
Yeah, do that.
He did like
but we're also still going to summarize
I'll find that while you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what was meant by Scripture at the time? Well, neither the Christian Old Testament nor the Jewish Tanakh had been formally formalized as far as what was in it. But there were a collection of traditional texts. But interestingly, some of them are not in the modern Bible in anyone's canon, Jewish or Christian. There are books that are currently in at least some Christian canons that are not in the Jewish canon or in other Christian canons. And also, some of the books that are universally accepted by Christians, like, the Pauline epistles or the four Gospels, were also not in that collection. So when Paul says that, at best you can say that some of the books currently in the Christian Old Testament, but maybe not even all of them necessarily, and maybe also some of the other ones, are what he meant. Further, if someone says something in, say, one book of the Bible about Scriptures, that's not the same thing as the other authors of other books that you currently consider Scripture saying those things. Because the books of the Bible were not all written by the same person. Now, we have good evidence that multiple of them may have been written by one person, or parts of multiples of them may have been written by a single source. But that's not the same thing as all of them being written by the same guy. Also, again, there's more than one canon. I'm very confident David Reeves takes the 66-book Protestant canon. But there are other canons. There's a 73-book canon that the Catholics use. There is a 74-book canon that is used by most of Eastern Christianity. The Ethiopian and Eritrean Tewahedo Orthodox churches use an even broader canon that includes I think 2 of the books of Enoch that no other Christians put in their canon. There is not.
They have like the oldest manuscript copies of that, if I'm not mistaken.
That wouldn't surprise me, but I wouldn't make the claim. So yeah, there is not the Bible. That's not a thing that exists. There are multiple canons, and the person who wrote that in the Bible wasn't talking about the canon you have now, David. Touchpad for 20 sec says, what do you get if you put 4 Richards in a sack? Oh, well, you get AIG, and so we'll take a drink for that. All right. Here we go. More David. See, by getting here, my thumbnail is no longer a lie. So I no longer have to redo it.
Be true from beginning to end, okay? Because the Father inspired the words that the men would write to create what we call God's Word, the Bible. So what I wanted to do over the next few moments is,
even if the Bible were inspired by God, and I'm not going to sit here and argue whether or not it is, because it's neither a historical nor a scientific question, so there's no...
Yeah, and it's just funny when two books about the same event have conflicting details, and it's like, are they both inspired? Well, yes.
Right. But here's the thing. Even people who think that the Bible is inspired by God do not then think that that means that everything recorded in it has to be literally true. Because most people who take the Bible as the Word of God think that the important thing about it are the theological, philosophical, and moral truths to be drawn from the stories, and not like the literal history of whether or not this guy killed that guy on such and such a time using the lower jaw of a donkey. Probably not the important part.
It's just funny to me because I'm like, look, I'm fine with conflicting narratives. I'm fine with recording them as both having like equal value. I mean, heck, that's what the Talmud is.
Remind me, Vishanti.
Elu, Debri, Elohim, Chaim. It's like these and those are the words of the living God, and I'm just like, yeah, we record the arguments and we treat them with equal value.
Remind me, how many different people have killed Goliath, and how many different ways was he killed? Because I think the answer is 2 and 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but the Bible cannot literally be true in its historical narrative, because its historical narrative contradicts itself at various points. Now, I'm not going to say it's like completely at odds with itself and you can't get any kind of coherent narrative out of it. That's also not really true. But
look, it doesn't have to be literally true for you to get like meaning and stuff like that out of it.
And you know, the weird thing is people
Same thing with like Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Lord of the Rings
I was just about to say that.
Narratives and none of them happened. It's like you can still learn about bravery and overcoming odds and having like some friends who are so close to you they'd like ride or die. You know, like come on.
And also, there are parts of the Lord of the Rings that maybe are a bit problematic, and you don't have to take super seriously. Like the part where orcs are just described as looking like people from Central Asia. Maybe you don't have to take that super seriously. You know, just a thought. Too Young to Feel This Old for $5 says, wait, is this guy who did that dumb creationist Goo to You song for kids? Yes. If not, the voice is dang near identical, and I hate that. No, it's the same guy. This is the guy who did the Evolution, something, something, Delusion. Yeah, that song. You haven't seen this?
No.
Oh, I'm going to inflict it upon your brain later.
Oh, no.
Yep, I'm going to do it.
Not watching that.
I'm going to do it.
I'm not clicking it.
You're going to have to. I'm going to trick you into it. We'll be watching a horror movie, and then suddenly, David Reeves' Evolution song, the most horrifying part of any movie.
Let's go over just a series of verses. Again, you can find, there's probably a few of these left on the back table. We've got a table back there. Please grab one freely. While you're there, there's a little blue card. The blue card, if you put your name and address on there, we will get you everything we see.
And you spam.
So what we're going to do is we will go verse by verse, and we'll ask ourselves the question, does the Bible know best?
Okay,
I'm going to need you. It's great. In other words, where I'm from. Did you know that atheism really has no explanation whatsoever as to where all of the matter in the universe came from?
That's true.
Atheism only answers one question. One.
It doesn't
one
even,
single question.
It doesn't even answer that question. It just describes the answer that some people give to that answer.
It describes the answer that someone gives to the question.
Right.
God, yes, no? And their answer is no. It does not address any other topic. It doesn't address any other subject.
Yeah, we're taking a drink
Why are these people so dumb?
Atheism doesn't describe the beginnings of the universe. Like, yeah, okay, great.
Chemistry doesn't explain the rain cycle.
Yeah. I mean, fun fact, not everything describes everything else. Like, hey, Vishanti, did you know that the Kantian ethics doesn't actually tell you how to synthesize new kinds of plastic? I guess that means that there's no use in moral philosophy. Okay.
Oh.
Great.
Medieval art history doesn't discuss, like, abiogenesis.
Yep. Turns out atheism is not a comprehensive philosophy that gives you the answer or gives you an answer to any question you could possibly ask. It just
and it won't be no matter how much creationists try to say that it is.
It describes your answer to a
Atheism
question.
is a religion. It's a model. It's a framework. No, it's not.
None of those things.
Literally not.
No explanation. So in other words, the Big Bang model is an attempt to explain how space and time took on its current shape, but does not even attempt to explain the actual origin of the universe, all the matter that's there.
I mean, it's true. Take a drink.
Kind of true, yeah. We'll take a drink, but also
it's a model that attempts to explain the current state of the universe. Like,
famously, one of the most important critics of the Big Bang Theory, in fact, the guy who coined the term the Big Bang, Fred Hoyle.
Yeah.
Like, a Christian might describe him as virulently atheist. He was like an anti-theist before it was cool to do that on Twitter. Also, anti-Big Bang. It turns out the Big Bang isn't atheism, and atheism isn't the Big Bang. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, Genesis 1:1. Okay. Is that supported by science? No. Is it contradicted by science? I would also argue no. I would say science is largely neutral on the question because, in general, while science hasn't found the need to have a divine recourse so far, and for that reason I don't think it's likely that it will, and it also doesn't generally concern itself with such questions, I don't think science could possibly disprove the idea that God had a hand in creating the heaven and the earth. By which we basically just mean the universe.
God as a thing is not something that science can even falsify.
Right. And as Mark Smith points out to both of us, geology doesn't explain how to make gazpacho. Well, geology disproved then. Get wrecked, rock people. Not rocking this in the music, like geology types.
Does that sound like a great scientific theory to you? It doesn't to me. In other words, what I'm telling you is that the first verse of Scripture explains the origin of space, time, and matter.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It just makes the assertion that God did
No,
it.
it doesn't.
It doesn't explain anything. The thing is, saying God doesn't actually produce anything like testable predictions, which is what science is ultimately all about, right? When I say God created the universe, okay, what experiment does that suggest? None. What body of data does that help explain in a theoretical framework that allows me to actually then look at how things are connected? It doesn't. It's not an explanation. It's a claim, and it might be true, and it might not be true. But it doesn't have anything...
It's outside of science.
Right. Strawberry Vane for $5 says, does the Bible know best? I don't know, David. How do you like slavery? Yeah, fair point. Yeah, because... And I tell you what, if anyone wants to come in and say, "Oh, the Bible only supports debt slavery and it's basically indentured servitude and it's not chattel slavery,"
incorrect.
Yeah, tell you what, come on,
you're factually incorrect.
We'll have that discussion. I can probably get on some people who are even more knowledgeable about the Old Testament than I am. Like, I could probably get Josh Bowen back on, Dr. Josh.
He's so over talking about this every stream. Like, he's so done.
Honestly, that's one of the reasons why when I had him on, we didn't talk about the Old Testament at all. Because everyone has him on to talk about the Old Testament. And I was like, no, let's talk about Sumerian. Let's talk about Sumerian grammar.
And he's just like...
Yep. But when I had him on, I'm like, look.
Yes, the Bible describes slavery. Yes, it's chattel slavery. No, it's not just that servitude. Right. Oh my God, stop.
Well, that's why when I had him on, I'm like, hey, let's talk about like how ergativity works in Sumerian grammar.
Let's talk about your actual field.
Right? I still think I could probably get him on to talk about slavery if someone actually came on to debate.
Yeah. That means that the Bible knows best. And again, that's just a very basic concept. Jeremiah 8 talks about a creature called the
the Bible doesn't know best. Don't stone your disobedient children. Literally don't do that.
Yeah, is there like a whole long discourse about various ways to get around that rule so that it never really applies to a real person? Is that like a thing that takes up like multiple pages of small print text somewhere? Where's that place?
It might even be found in the Talmud.
Weird. So what you're saying is there might be 613 mitzvot, but that one doesn't apply very often.
Like we realized that instruction is morally questionable and decided, nah.
I'm going to pass on that one. Yeah. You know what? It might be 613, but we're going to effectively knock that number down just a little bit.
I mean, there's still 613. We just realized, hey, look, the phrasing here indicates that it's such a narrow set of criteria that no one will ever meet it.
Okay. Curb C for $5 said AIG is a bag of dicks backwards, except AIG is also the right way around, so it actually says GIA is a bag of dicks backwards. But you know what? We'll drink for it anyway.
Terrible Gia.
Yeah. Darn it, Gia.
Gia.
I think G is the name of like the Samurai Yellow Ranger. Samurai was such a bad season. It was a bad season. No, wait, no, that was Megaforce Yellow, not Samurai Yellow. Megaforce Yellow. Megaforce was also bad.
Sure.
You know what? I have to bring it around to Power Rangers a little bit.
Swallow. This sea swallow, I'll just read you the verse, and then we're going to ask this question.
Okay, so the verse in Jeremiah 8:7 is about storks. Does that look like a stork to you, Vishanti?
Listen, I'm no birdologist, but that's not a stork.
Okay, just checking. All right, let's see what Jeremiah says about the stork, and then pretend that it applies to the Arctic tern for some reason. Because anytime the Bible mentions any bird, you can just say it's any other bird if that makes you think the Bible is more true.
The stork in the heaven knows her appointed times, the turtle dove, the crane, and the swallow. Let's talk
None of which are terns, my guy.
about the sea swallow for a moment, or the Arctic tern.
That's not a swallow. It's a tern. Okay, sure, whatever.
The Arctic tern is a seabird or a sea swallow. There's about 1 million of them out there on planet Earth right now. They live approximately 20 to 30 years. They will mate for life. They're incredible creatures, and they take a particular course, just like other birds, where they'll go south and follow that warmer weather, and then they'll come back north as the warmer weather comes back towards us. And so they migrate like many other birds. Yeah. But their migration path is quite extraordinary.
Birds migrate, and someone said it, therefore Bible true.
But the Bible didn't even talk about the actual pole-to-pole migration of the Arctic tern, right? It just said birds migrate regularly, which...
You know what? I'm going to go look that passage up.
I'm going to take a drink real quick.
There's something that's bothering me about that citation.
I'm going to talk about this a little bit.
What is this? Jeremiah.
Okay, so
8:7. Okay, I'm going to go look this up because something's bothering me about this.
So here's the thing. Like I said at the beginning, yeah, most verses of the Bible are probably reasonable from a scientific standpoint, most of them. And the thing is, it's not unusual for people to note that birds migrate. Like, that's not some kind of crazy thing that no one could have possibly noticed.
Nothing burger.
Yeah. If you want to say that this is some kind of extraordinary special knowledge, you have to show why it is that this migration knowledge was unusual. Now, I will grant you, it would have been unusual if people in the Levant had known about the Arctic tern migrating pole to pole.
I knew it.
Is there any evidence that they did? Not from that verse. All right, what do we got, Vishanti?
I knew. Oh.
What do we got? Come
on. Okay, so the words there where he says, "Oh yeah, even these birds know their appointed times." The word there is the same word that's used to apply to holidays on the Jewish liturgical calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Convocations is another better word for it. What convocations do birds have?
I mean, I would be willing to spot him that means that the author is talking about migrations on certain days or times of year. I'd be willing to extend that much charity.
Okay. Because that same word's also used for the tent of meeting.
Yeah, look.
So I'm
I can see where you could make the argument that literally the birds aren't celebrating holidays and therefore it's a bit iffy, but I'm willing to allow that to be analogized to migrations.
Okay. It also says, guard the times of their coming, but my people don't know the judgment of their God. It's like they're coming in and going out. And I'm just like, okay, guard it. That's nice, but migration is an easily observable phenomenon, and him trying to make this say that birds have a cosmic sense of where they need to go and when.
Yeah.
It's, okay.
No.
No.
Also, Savage Cobra, kind of official for $5 says, but barnacles are an ontogenetic stage for geese, right? Which, no, but to be fair, that's not in the Bible. That was a medieval belief in Europe that gooseneck barnacles eventually matured into actual geese. I don't know why they thought that, but it's a thing. Actually, gooseneck barnacles are making an appearance in the video that I'm going to be finishing up today. So if you like gooseneck barnacles, join the Patreon or join the channel memberships. Because
So yeah, let's let him finish because I have an idea that he's not gonna approve.
well, we don't have a whole lot of time. He might not even finish.
Okay.
Up on the
I'm
screen,
good.
a picture of a world map.
Okay.
You see, these Arctic terns might start in Greenland or the
I'm just going to point out that Africa and Spain aren't actually connected by a land bridge. But, you know, hey, whatever.
Netherlands, and they will pick a path southward along the African coast. Now, as they get towards the southern tip of Africa, they will turn eastward, and they will travel as far as Australia, sometimes New Zealand, before they then turn south again, where they will spend their summers, our winters, in Antarctica.
They always spend they're always in summer. You can't just say their summers, because when they go back north, it's still summer. But I'm just going to take a drink for David Reeves not knowing how seasons work on the globe. Maybe he's a flat earther.
Dapper, did the ancient Hebrews know that Greenland existed?
No, not that I can tell. But they
Did they
probably...
know that Australia and New Zealand existed? Or Antarctica?
I doubt it. No.
Hell, did most of humanity know that Antarctica existed for like about 120, 150 years ago?
I mean, if you're going to go with most of humanity, then the answer for both Antarctica and Australia is still no.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay, just asking.
Because while Australia has been inhabited for like 10,000 years, most of humans didn't know about that.
That's right. When it's cold up here, it's actually warm in the southern hemisphere, and vice versa. Okay, summer and winter alternate
True,
like
take a
that
drink.
from the southern and northern hemisphere. Okay, so they're spending their summers, our winters, traveling around in some of Antarctica before it finally starts to get really cold down there, and they start their northern migration, which many
'cause it's
times
not
takes
really
them in an
cold
S-shaped
all
curve
the
up
time.
the coast of America to find their way right back to where they started. Now, I don't know if you've made this connection yet, but that's a long ways. That's a global map.
Jeez.
If you were to track these Arctic terns, you would realize that they're traveling approximately 56,000 miles.
Okay, this is actually 2 bingo check marks. If you've got cool thing, therefore God, mark that
Yep.
off. But if you also got
Big
big
number,
number, therefore
therefore
God,
God.
yep, check that off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Pro tip,
Mm-hmm.
big number and cool thing are not actually arguments for anything in particular. And it's not exclusive to God, right? Like, big number, therefore, usually doesn't work. For whatever the therefore thing is. Just put that out there. All right, we're going to get a little bit more in, and then we're going to start wrapping it up. And also, I need to figure out whether or not we just hit another feather video, so I know whether or not to make my next video a feather. But we're going to listen to our buddy here while I figure that out.
Every single year. And let's see if we have very observant audience members today. How long do they live? 20 to 30 years. 20 to 30 years, just do the math. That means that these Arctic terns are traveling 1.5 million miles during their lifetime. Talk about some frequent flyer
Big
points
number.
right there.
Yep.
Woo.
Cool.
What's your point?
Yeah, there is.
Don't care.
There isn't one, really. But if there is one, we'll get to it next time. Or we'll probably back up just a little bit to remind ourselves of this. And
Dang
the
it.
answer is no, we did not quite get to the feathered number. For me.
Even if I was generous and checked off another box or two on my bingo card, I'm still almost filled up to the point where I could achieve a bingo if I just got one more thing in any direction. And I'm like,
Darn it.
dang
Darn.
it.
All right, well, we're not quite at the feather video, which means that if we don't get it on Tuesday for Matt with Maddie, the next video won't have feathers. But we did make it to your feather mark. So you still owe people
Yes,
3
we
more
did.
feather videos.
Yeah.
All right.
How long did they live? Touchpad asks until they died.
Yes, that is how that works. All right, guys, let's take a look. Vishanti, do you have anything coming up that people might want to know about for you?
I don't think I'm on any streams this week, but if that changes, I will let you know.
All right. Well, on the 16th, we are having...
I do have a wish list, though.
Yes.
Feel free to look at it.
Actually, I'm going to add your channel to this because not knowing whether you would be here, I didn't do it. but there was a chance you wouldn't be. So
Yes.
I'm going to add in featuring at Vishanti. So your wish list can be found on your channel, which is now linked in the description. I don't remember what's on it. I think there's like nail polish and leggings and like Legos, maybe?
There's a computer monitor, some books about like biblical text, there's some like nerdy stuff. That's a whole bunch of random.
Okay. Strawberry Main says, I just love how Yex pronounce millions. They can never just say millions like a real humans.
Millions.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of thing. Oh, where'd your camera go?
What?
Camera's gone.
That was a thing.
That's weird. All right.
I don't know.
Let's take a look at my calendar. So on the 16th, we're looking at Matt with Maddie. That has already been preliminarily confirmed with Maddie.
Yee.
Yeah. Look, we're going to get more Matt McLean in here. Which, I mean, he's the best Matt. But as someone pointed out, the bar for the best Matt on this channel is really low.
That's very low.
Yeah, to which I responded, yeah, the bar is basically at the bottom of the Cola Super Deep borehole. That's where the bar is. Yeah. Ooh, that's even worse. On Thursday, we're getting part 2 of the Hydroplate Hype video. So if you liked Hydroplate Hype, which apparently no one did because it has severely underperformed, but hey, that's a thing that happens. Yikes. Yeah. It's one of those things where like, oh hey, your like click-through rate is great. Your number of people watching is really terrible. It's like, oh, okay, so you're just not showing it to anyone. Thanks, YouTube. Which means, by the way, guys, if you could do me a favor, send people the Hydroplate Hype video and get them to watch it. So that way it can be less terrible and you can tell YouTube that, no, in fact, people would like to watch this. That would be helpful. So yeah, that'll be on the 18th at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. You do the math if you're elsewhere. And then on the 20th, we are looking at another, probably Dapper Reacts. I want to say that right now I tentatively have the 10,000 subscriber special scheduled for the 27th, but that may or may not happen depending on how many subscribers I get between now and 2 weeks from now. So if it is in fact in line with what I've been getting on average for the last month or so, then it will happen by then. However, if it doesn't, it won't. Now, at some point, probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I'm going to be hopefully having Zach Hancock on to talk about junk DNA, genetic entropy, and some stuff like that. We're going to be taking a look at a video by Sal Cordova about genetic entropy and junk DNA.
Snap.
Yep.
Get wrecked. Also, I agree with touchpad. To me, there's only one Matt. Matt Damon.
I mean, he's a better Matt than any of the other 3 Matts that we've talked about.
I just love that bit of Team America. That's hysterical to me. Matt Damon. That's how I read his name every time now.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. If you are a channel member or a patron and you're in the Discord, you can head over there in the next few minutes. I've got a few things to take care of first, but then we're going to be having a Power Rangers watch party. We're going to be watching all but the final episode, or well, the final 4 except for the last one. Like, you know, so we have 5 more episodes of Power Rangers Zeo. We're going to watch 4 of the last 5 over there. So head over, and then after Matt with Maddie, we're probably going to do the last episode, and then Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, which is great.
Dapper.
What's up?
The shade. Ugly German Truth says, Sal Cordova, isn't that the one with the lying friend?
It is the one with the lying friend. Yeah. Yep.
Get wrecked!
Yep. All right, everybody, I will hopefully see you either later over in the Discord or on Tuesday. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Tapioca Weasel, Klaus Jepsen, Benthoven, Kevin Brostek Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Monkey They Them, San, Denny5252, Eleron Teller, Phil Havara, Ian Chen, Mrs. Spexinder, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Scriptic Mystic. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is. And perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.